Right now, at this exact moment, 4 warships are sitting in a British port, engines ready, crews trained, mission planned down to the last detail. And when those ships finally move, they are going to trigger a chain reaction that will drain hundreds of millions of dollars directly out of Vladimir Putin's war chest, drop oil prices across the entire planet, and prove once and for all that the global balance of naval power has permanently shifted. I am going to tell you exactly what is about to happen, who is behind it, and why even the United States intelligence community did not see this coming. But I am saving the most jaw-dropping part of this story for the very end of this video, because when you hear the full picture, you are going to want to rewind it and watch it again. Before we get into it, quick question from me. Where in the world are you watching this right now? Drop your country in the comments. I read every single one. Now, let us rewind to the beginning, because to understand why what the UK and Ukraine are preparing to do is so significant, you first need to understand exactly how badly broken the Strait of Hormuz has become for every single person on this planet. The Strait of Hormuz is 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. That is it. 34 kilometers of water between Iran and Oman, and through that tiny corridor flows 20% of the world's entire oil supply, 20% of global liquefied natural gas, and up to 30% of all internationally traded fertilizers. Before the Iran war began, around 3,000 vessels passed through that strait every single month. Right now, that number has collapsed to almost nothing, less than 5% of what it was. The International Energy Agency has officially described this as the single largest supply disruption in the entire recorded history of the global oil market. Not one of the largest ever, bigger than the 1970s oil shock. And the consequences have been immediate and brutal for ordinary people. Brent crude surged past $120 a barrel. Petrol prices spiked. European gas prices nearly doubled. Airlines started adding fuel surcharges to every ticket. Countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Vietnam declared national fuel emergencies. Gulf states that import over 80% of their food through that strait started airlifting basic groceries because supermarket shelves were running empty. So that is what is broken. The most important waterway in the global economy is essentially shut, and the reason it is shut comes down to one thing: mines. Iran laid so many naval mines in that strait so quickly in the opening chaos of the conflict that, according to a report in the New York Times citing U.S. officials, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps itself lost track of exactly where all of its own mines were placed. Think about that. Iran cannot fully account for its own minefield. And then on April 23rd, Axios confirmed something that took the situation from serious to genuinely alarming. The IRGC had started actively laying fresh mines in the strait again. New mines, while a ceasefire was technically in place. President Trump responded immediately, ordering the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any Iranian vessel caught laying mines, no hesitation. He also ordered U.S. minesweeping operations to triple, and the Pentagon made a stark acknowledgement that the full clearance of the Strait of Hormuz could take up to 6 months. 6 months of closed shipping lanes, 6 months of energy chaos, 6 months of economic damage flowing to every corner of the planet. And here is the part that changes everything. The U.S. Navy, despite being the most powerful naval force in history, is already stretched thin across multiple operational theaters in the region simultaneously. They cannot do this alone. They need partners, and that is exactly where the story takes a turn that nobody predicted. The country that stepped forward first. The country that stood up at the April 22nd International Summit in Northwood and declared its forces trained, ready, and prepared to deploy immediately was not France, was not Germany, was not any of the major NATO naval powers that everyone assumed would lead this mission. It was Ukraine. Ukraine, a country that has spent 4 years fighting for its own survival against a Russian invasion, a country that has been under bombardment, under economic pressure, under constant attack. That country looked at the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz and said, "We are ready. We will go." And what Ukraine is bringing to that strait is not symbolic. It is operationally serious. Ukraine has 4 purpose-built NATO-standard mine hunting vessels currently docked in Portsmouth. 2 of them, the Chernihiv and the Chenisy, are former Royal Navy ships, sophisticated mine hunters equipped with variable-depth sonar systems that can be lowered deep into warm, acoustically complex Gulf waters to detect mines that a standard hull-mounted sonar would simply miss. One of those ships has already operated in the Middle East. It spent 3 years deployed there between 2018 and 2021. It knows those waters. The other 2 vessels came from the Belgian and Dutch navies. All 4 crews have completed full NATO interoperability assessments, and the Netherlands is already preparing to deliver a 5th ship to Ukraine in June. Ukraine's mine countermeasures fleet is not shrinking, it is growing. Italy has now confirmed it is assembling a 4-vessel package to join the coalition. France and the UK jointly declared on April 17th that they will establish an international defensive mission for the Strait the moment a sustainable ceasefire holds. Over 36 countries have signed a joint statement condemning Iranian attacks on commercial shipping. But it was Ukraine that moved first. Ukraine that established the framework every other nation is now building on. Now, here is where this story goes from strategically interesting to genuinely explosive, because there is a second country watching all of this unfold with absolute dread, and that country is Russia. Let me give you the economic picture, because the numbers here are staggering. By early 2026, Russia's war economy was starting to buckle. Oil export revenues had fallen to their lowest levels since the full-scale invasion began. Ukrainian drone strikes on Baltic port facilities and Black Sea export infrastructure had cut Russian oil export volumes by as much as 40%, according to Reuters. Russia's GDP was contracting. Inflation was running above 10%. Bankruptcies had surged by 31% in 2025. Putin was facing a moment, according to analysis from Chatham House, where he might have been forced into real concessions in peace talks, simply because Russia could no longer financially sustain the war at its current intensity. And then the Strait of Hormuz closed, and everything changed for Putin overnight. Brent crude surged past $120. The Financial Times calculated that Russia was suddenly earning an extra $150 million per day from its oil sales, purely because of the price spike caused by the Hormuz closure. Countries that had been reducing their Russian oil purchases under Western pressure started scrambling to buy whatever Moscow could supply because Gulf oil had vanished from the market. Russian crude that had been selling at a discount was in some cases suddenly selling at a premium. Chatham House described the Iran war plainly as an economic gift for Putin. $150 million every single day. Every week the Strait stays closed is effectively over $1 billion of additional capacity for Russia's military. That is the direct financial pipeline between the mines sitting in the Strait of Hormuz and the soldiers dying on the front lines in eastern Ukraine. It is not abstract. It is not theoretical. It is a direct cash transfer from Iran's mine-laying strategy into Putin's ability to keep fighting. And Ukraine understood this completely. That is why Zelensky moved so fast. Ukraine had spent months using drones to attack Russia's oil export infrastructure, precisely because it understands that hitting Russia's revenues is as effective as hitting its ammunition depots. And then the Hormuz closure wiped out much of that work overnight by sending prices so high that Russia's remaining exports became far more profitable than before. Sending mine hunters to clear Hormuz is Ukraine continuing the exact same economic strategy, just on a global stage instead of a regional one. When those mines are cleared, shipping resumes, global oil supply increases, prices fall, and Russia loses its windfall. The math is that simple and that devastating. Now, I promised you at the start of this video that I was saving the most jaw-dropping part of the story for the end. Here it is. This is the part that even U.S. intelligence analysts reportedly did not fully anticipate when they were modeling the consequences of Ukraine's involvement in the Hormuz coalition. Turkey's invocation of the Montreux Convention means Ukraine legally cannot send its naval vessels into the Black Sea. For Putin, that has always felt like an invisible ceiling on Ukrainian naval ambition. Russia devastated Ukraine's conventional fleet in the opening phase of the war, and while Ukraine rebuilt its naval capability brilliantly through drone warfare and unmanned surface vehicles, the Montreux Convention still technically capped what Ukraine could project in terms of traditional naval power. But here is what Putin missed. Ukraine does not need the Black Sea anymore. Ukraine just stepped around the entire constraint. By deploying mine hunters to the Persian Gulf, thousands of miles from the Black Sea, thousands of miles from the front lines, Ukraine is not just clearing mines, it is demonstrating to the entire world that it can project naval power globally. It is building 10-year defense partnerships with Gulf Arab states that include Ukrainian sea drone technology. It is operating alongside the Royal Navy, coordinating with French and Italian vessels, training with NATO partners in British ports. Putin invaded Ukraine in February 2022, expecting to eliminate a regional military power in a matter of days. Instead, he spent 4 years creating something he never imagined, a combat-hardened, globally connected naval and drone warfare force that can now operate in the Persian Gulf and hurt his war revenues from halfway around the world. That is the thing even the United States did not fully see coming. Not just the mine-clearing capability, the strategic transformation of what Ukraine is. Ukraine is no longer just a country that needs help. Ukraine is becoming a country that provides help, a genuine defense and security partner that other nations want on their side. And every alliance it builds in the Gulf, every mine it clears in Hormuz, every dollar it strips from Putin's oil windfall is proof that the old assumptions about this war, about who wins, about what Ukraine can and cannot do, are being rewritten right now, in real time. The ships are in Portsmouth, the crews are ready, the plan is written, the coalition is formed. The only thing standing between those 4 vessels and the Strait of Hormuz is a political signal that the ceasefire is real and durable. And when that signal comes, those ships will move south, through the Suez Canal, into the Red Sea, into the Gulf of Oman. And when they get there, they will not just be carrying sonar equipment, they will be carrying proof that a country that was supposed to have been broken 4 years ago is now operating on the world stage in ways that even its closest allies did not fully anticipate. That is the story underneath the story. That is why even the United States could not quite believe what the UK and Ukraine were preparing to do. Now, I want to know what you think. Do you believe those ships actually make it to Hormuz? And when they do, how long before Putin starts feeling the financial impact? Drop your answer in the comments right now. If this video gave you something to think about, hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it helps this reach the people who need to understand what is actually happening in the world. Subscribe if you are not already, because this situation is moving fast, and I will be here covering every single development as it unfolds. I will see you in the next one.